In a galaxy brimming with countless species, humanity had earned a peculiar reputation. To many alien civilizations, humans were seen as timid creatures, soft, weak, and overly reliant on words rather than action. They were known for their endless negotiations, their preference for peace over conflict, and their reluctance to engage in outright warfare unless absolutely necessary. While some admired their adaptability and ingenuity, others viewed these traits as signs of cowardice. Zenara Vale was among the latter group. A towering warrior from the Calith race, she stood at nearly 8 feet tall, her muscular frame covered in shimmering silver armor that reflected light like liquid metal. Her piercing green eyes glowed faintly in the dark, a hallmark of her people's warrior bloodline. Zenara was not just any fighter. She was an elite commander, revered across the stars for her unmatched skill in battle. To the Calith, strength was everything. Physical power, unyielding resolve, and the willingness to face death head-on defined their culture. Humans, by comparison, seemed pitifully fragile. Her disdain for humanity had deep roots. Growing up, Zenara had heard tales of how human diplomats would cower behind treaties instead of standing firm against aggressors. She had witnessed firsthand during interstellar councils how they avoided direct confrontations, always choosing diplomacy over decisive action. It frustrated her. How could such a species survive in a universe filled with predators and peril? In her mind, survival required dominance, not endless compromise. One day, while stationed aboard a Calith warship patrolling the edge of contested space, Zenara received orders that would force her into closer contact with humans than ever before. Intelligence reports indicated that a rogue faction known as the Vorthek Horde was amassing forces near a remote sector. This region happened to be home to a small human outpost, one of many scattered throughout the galaxy. Though the humans themselves posed no immediate threat, their proximity made them relevant to the unfolding situation. Reluctantly, Zenara set course for the outpost. Her mission was clear: gather information about the Vorthek movements and determine whether the humans could provide any useful intel. If not, she would move on without wasting another moment. As far as she was concerned, this detour was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. When Zenara arrived at the outpost, she stepped off her sleek black shuttle with all the authority of someone who expected obedience. The airlock hissed open, revealing a modest facility built into the side of an asteroid. Rows of blinking control panels lined the walls, and a handful of human officers turned to greet her. Among them stood Commander Elias Drake, a man whose steady gaze immediately caught Zenara's attention. Elias was shorter than Zenara by several feet, his lean build clad in a simple navy blue uniform adorned with insignias marking his rank. His brown hair was neatly trimmed, and his calm demeanor contrasted sharply with Zenara's imposing presence. Yet there was something about him, a quiet confidence, that intrigued her despite herself. "Commander Drake," she said curtly, her voice low and commanding. "I'm here for your data regarding the Vorthek activity." Elias nodded politely but did not bow or fawn over her as she might have expected. Instead, he crossed his arms and replied evenly, "You'll have to earn our trust first, Commander Vale. We don't hand over classified information lightly." Zenara blinked, taken aback by his audacity. No one dared speak to her like that, not even members of her own crew. For a brief moment, anger flared within her, but she quickly suppressed it. These humans truly were insufferable. Still, she couldn't deny that Elias's response intrigued her. Perhaps there was more to this species than she had assumed. Before she could press further, alarms blared throughout the outpost. Red lights flashed overhead as panicked voices echoed through the corridors. "Hostile ships approaching," someone shouted. "Scavengers, they're firing on us." Zenara instinctively reached for her plasma blade, ready to charge into battle. But what happened next surprised her even more than Elias's boldness earlier. Without hesitation, the human commander sprang into action, barking orders with precision and clarity. Within moments, the entire outpost transformed into a hive of organized chaos. Engineers scrambled to reinforce defenses, Pilots rushed to their fighters, and soldiers armed themselves with grim determination. Peering out of a viewport, Zenera watched as swarms of scavenger vessels descended upon the outpost. Their weapons fired relentlessly, sending shards of debris spiraling into space. Any other species might have crumbled under such an assault, but the humans held their ground. Under Elias's leadership, they launched a counterattack, using clever maneuvers to outwit their attackers. Small squads of fighters darted between larger enemy ships, targeting weak points with surgical precision. For the first time in her life, Zenera felt a flicker of respect for humans, of all things. They weren't fighting with brute strength, but with strategy, teamwork, and sheer willpower. And at the center of it all was Elias Drake, cool and composed as he directed every move. As the skirmish raged on, Zenera found herself wondering if perhaps she had misjudged humanity. Maybe their so-called cowardice wasn't weakness after all, but something far more complex. The battle against the scavengers raged on, and Zenera Vale found herself reluctantly impressed by the humans' resilience. From her position near the command center, she observed how Commander Elias Drake orchestrated the defense with calculated precision. Every order he gave seemed to anticipate the scavengers' next move, turning what could have been chaos into a coordinated effort. The outpost's crew worked seamlessly together, their actions synchronized as if they were extensions of one another. Zenera had always believed that true strength came from individual prowess, the ability to overpower an opponent through sheer force. Yet here was a species that relied not on raw power, but on unity and strategy. It was unfamiliar territory for her, but she couldn't deny its effectiveness. As plasma bolts streaked past the viewport and explosions lit up the void outside, she felt a rare pang of curiosity about these beings she had once dismissed so easily. Despite her growing respect, Zenera remained skeptical. She watched Elias closely, studying his every decision. He didn't shout hysterically or panic under pressure. Instead, his voice carried calm authority, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. At one point, he turned to address her directly. "Commander Vale," he said, his tone steady despite the chaos around them, "we could use your help defending the Western Quadrant. Their fighters are breaching our shields there." Zenera hesitated for only a moment before nodding, though she wasn't accustomed to taking orders, especially from a human. She recognized the logic in his request. The scavengers were relentless, and the outpost defenses were stretched thin. If they lost the Western Quadrant, it would leave the entire facility vulnerable. With a swift motion, she activated her plasma blade, its glowing edge humming softly as she stepped toward the designated area. As Zenera moved through the corridors, she encountered several human soldiers preparing for the fight. They glanced at her briefly, their expressions ranging from awe to apprehension. None of them questioned her presence, however, which surprised her. In any other situation, most species would have been wary of allowing an outsider, let alone a Caliph warrior, to join their ranks. But these humans trusted their commander implicitly, and by extension, they trusted her to follow his lead. When she reached the Western Quadrant, the scene was chaos incarnate. Scavenger drones buzzed like angry insects, firing indiscriminately at anything that moved. Human engineers worked frantically to repair damaged systems, while soldiers returned fire with handheld energy rifles. Zenera wasted no time diving into the fray, her blade slicing through enemy drones with lethal efficiency. Her movements were fluid and precise, each strike calculated to maximize impact. Within moments, the tide began to shift in their favor. But just as the scavengers' advance slowed, a massive explosion rocked the corridor. A section of the ceiling collapsed, trapping several humans beneath rubble. Zenera froze for a split second, unsure whether to continue fighting or assist the injured. Before she could decide, Elias appeared beside her, barking commands to his team. "Medics to the Western Quadrant. Secure the perimeter." Then, without hesitation, he dropped to his knees and began pulling away chunks of debris, ignoring the danger posed by nearby scavenger fire. Zenera watched him intently, her chest tightening with something she couldn't quite name. Was this compassion? Sacrifice? To her people, such acts were often seen as weaknesses, a waste of resources in the heat of battle. And yet there was a strange kind of strength in Elias's willingness to put himself at risk for others. Unable to stand idly by, Zenera joined him, using her immense strength to lift heavier pieces of rubble. Together, they freed the trapped soldiers, who immediately returned to their posts despite their injuries. One of them, a young woman with a bleeding arm, nodded gratefully at Zenera before rushing back into the fight. For the first time in her life, Zenera felt a sense of camaraderie, however fleeting, with individuals she had once considered inferior. Once the immediate threat was neutralized, Elias turned to her, his face streaked with sweat and soot. "We've got them retreating," he said, his voice tinged with exhaustion but also triumph. "Thanks for your help out there." Zenera nodded stiffly, unsure how to respond. Gratitude wasn't something she was used to expressing or receiving. Instead, she simply said, "Your tactics are effective. I underestimated you." Elias chuckled softly, though it sounded more weary than amused. "You're not the first. Most people don't expect much from us until they see us in action." His words lingered in her mind long after the battle ended. The scavengers had fled, leaving behind a battered but intact outpost. As the crew began assessing the damage, Zenera retreated to a quieter corner of the facility to process what she had witnessed. These humans weren't cowards. They were survivors. Their strength lay not in brute force, but in their ability to adapt, to think critically, and to support one another in the face of overwhelming odds. Over the next few hours, Zenera found herself observing the humans more closely. She noticed how they cared for their wounded, sharing supplies and offering words of encouragement. She saw engineers working tirelessly to repair damaged systems, their hands moving with practiced skill. Even in the aftermath of the attack, there was a sense of purpose and determination that permeated the outpost. Eventually, Elias approached her again. "Now that the immediate danger has passed," he said, "maybe we can talk about why you're here. You mentioned needing information about the Vorthek Horde." Zenera straightened, reminded of her original mission. "Yes," she replied. "Their movements concern my people. We believe they may pose a greater threat than these scavengers." Elias studied her for a moment, then gestured toward a nearby conference room. "Let's sit down and discuss it. We'll share what we know, if you're willing to do the same." For the first time, Zenera realized that perhaps cooperation wasn't a sign of weakness after all. It was a tool, much like a weapon or a shield, designed to achieve a common goal. As she followed Elias into the room, she felt a flicker of hope, not for herself, but for the possibility that two vastly different species might find a way to understand each other. Little did she know, this meeting would mark the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about strength, courage, and the nature of true leadership. The conference room was small but functional, its walls lined with holographic displays and data terminals. Commander Elias Drake gestured for Zenera Vale to take a seat at the circular table, which bore faint scorch marks from previous skirmishes, a testament to the outpost's resilience. Despite the lingering tension of the recent attack, there was an unspoken understanding between them now. They had fought side by side, and that shared experience created a fragile bond. Elias activated one of the holographic screens, projecting a map of nearby star systems. Red markers indicated areas where the Vorthek Horde had been spotted, while blue dots represented human outposts and trade routes. "This is what we know so far," he began, his tone measured but urgent. "The Horde has been targeting resource-rich regions, particularly those near contested space. They've been hitting supply lines hard, cutting off fuel and materials essential for defense." Zenera leaned forward, her glowing green eyes scanning the map intently. She noted how methodical the Vorthek movements were, too calculated to be random raids. "They're probing weaknesses," she said aloud, more to herself than to Elias. "Testing defenses before launching a full-scale assault." "Exactly," Elias agreed, nodding. And if they succeed in destabilizing this sector, it won't just affect us. It'll put your people at risk too. The Caliph territories aren't far from here. Her gaze snapped up to meet his, surprise flickering across her face. She hadn't expected him to acknowledge the potential threat to her own species. Most humans she'd encountered cared little for anything beyond their immediate concerns. Yet here was Elias, considering the bigger picture, not just for himself, but for others as well. He guided the squadron into a narrow asteroid field, using the jagged rocks as cover. From there, they launched targeted strikes, picking off enemy ships one by one. Zinara marveled at the precision of Elias's tactics, realizing that sometimes patience yielded greater results than brute force. By the time the ambush ended, the Vorthak had retreated, leaving behind a trail of wreckage. Though battered, Zinara's squadron emerged victorious. As they regrouped back at the outpost, she turned to Elias, her expression unreadable. "You were right," she admitted gruffly. "Your way works." Elias grinned, exhaustion evident in his features, but satisfaction shining in his eyes. "Told you, strength isn't just about power, it's about knowing when to use it." For the first time, Zinara allowed herself to smile faintly. Perhaps humanity wasn't as weak as she'd once believed. In fact, they might just teach her a thing or two about what it meant to be strong. The days following the successful reconnaissance mission brought a noticeable shift in the dynamic between Zinara Vale and Commander Elias Drake. Their initial clash of personalities had evolved into something resembling mutual respect, though neither would admit it outright. Zinara still found herself questioning many aspects of human behavior, especially their emphasis on empathy and cooperation, but she couldn't ignore the results Elias achieved through his leadership style. For the first time in her life, she began to wonder if there was more to strength than sheer dominance. One evening, after another long day of strategizing against the Vorthak horde, Zinara wandered into the outpost's observation deck. The room was dimly lit, its walls lined with large windows that offered a breathtaking view of the stars. She stood alone for a moment, gazing out at the endless expanse of space. It was both beautiful and humbling, a reminder of how small even the mightiest warriors were in the grand scheme of the universe. Her solitude didn't last long. Elias entered quietly, pausing when he noticed her presence. "Didn't mean to interrupt," he said, raising a hand apologetically. "I come here sometimes to clear my head." Zinara shook her head. "You're not interrupting. I was thinking." Elias stepped closer, joining her by the window. He seemed hesitant to speak at first, as if unsure whether to broach a sensitive topic. Finally, he asked, "What made you become a warrior? Was it always your path?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her such a personal thing before, not even members of her own species. Among the Caliph, talking about emotions or motivations was seen as unnecessary. Strength spoke for itself. There was no need to explain it. But something about Elias's genuine curiosity disarmed her. After a pause, she replied, "For my people, becoming a warrior is not a choice. It's an expectation. From birth, we are trained to fight, to protect our clans, to prove ourselves worthy. Weakness is not tolerated." Elias nodded thoughtfully. That must have been hard, always having to live up to those expectations. "It's not about hardship," Zinara countered sharply. "It's about duty, honor. Without them, we have nothing." He held up his hands in mock surrender. "Hey, I'm not judging. Just trying to understand where you're coming from." His nonchalant tone softened her defensiveness slightly. She turned back to the window, watching the distant stars shimmer like scattered diamonds. "And what about you?" she asked after a moment. "Why do you lead these humans? Why take on the burden?" Elias chuckled softly, leaning against the railing. "Honestly, because someone has to. Not everyone can be fearless warriors like you. Some people need guidance, encouragement. They need to know they're not alone. That's what leadership means to me." Zinara frowned, processing his words. To her, Leadership meant command, authority, and control. The idea of leading by lifting others up rather than asserting dominance felt alien, yet strangely compelling. She thought back to the way Elias interacted with his crew, the trust they placed in him, the loyalty they showed without question. Could this really be a form of strength? Later that night, Zinara faced a crisis within her own ranks. One of her lieutenants, a seasoned fighter named Renak, confronted her in private. His voice carried an edge of frustration as he questioned her decision to work so closely with humans. "They're holding us back, Commander," he argued. "Their tactics are too slow, too cautious. We should strike now while we have the advantage." Zinara bristled at the challenge but forced herself to remain calm. In the past, she would have silenced such dissent immediately, using intimidation to reassert her authority. But now, doubt crept into her mind. Was Renak right? Were the humans slowing them down, or was she simply unused to their methods? For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the holographic display filled the silence as they studied the map together. Finally, Zinara broke the quiet. "We need to act quickly. My fleet can provide reinforcements, but we'll need precise intel on their positions and tactics. And we can give you that," Elias replied confidently. "But it won't be easy. The Vorthak are cunning and they adapt fast. We'll have to stay one step ahead of them." A flicker of doubt crossed Zinara's mind. Trusting humans still felt foreign to her, even after witnessing their bravery during the scavenger attack. Could they truly hold their own against such a formidable foe? Sensing her hesitation, Elias added, "I'm not saying we'll win without losses, but I am saying we have a better chance working together than apart." Reluctantly, Zinara nodded. As much as she disliked relying on outsiders, logic dictated that an alliance would strengthen their position. Besides, Elias had proven himself capable, not just as a leader, but as someone who valued collaboration over ego. Perhaps there was merit in his approach after all. Over the next several days, Zinara remained aboard the outpost, working closely with Elias and his team to devise a strategy. It wasn't always smooth sailing. Cultural differences often led to misunderstandings, especially when it came to leadership styles. Zinara was accustomed to issuing orders and expecting immediate compliance, while Elias preferred open dialogue and input from his crew. Initially, this frustrated her. She saw it as indecisiveness. But as she watched how Elias fostered loyalty and morale among his people, she began to appreciate the strength in his methods. One evening, as they reviewed patrol schedules in the command center, a young human technician approached them hesitantly. "Commander Drake," he said, glancing nervously at Zinara, "there's something unusual on long-range sensors. It might be worth taking a look." Elias motioned for the tech to bring up the readings on the main screen. What appeared was a dense cluster of ships moving in formation, a pattern consistent with Vorthak behavior. But something about their trajectory seemed off. Instead of heading directly toward valuable resources, they were veering slightly away, almost as if they were avoiding detection. "They're testing us," Zinara murmured, narrowing her eyes. "Sending decoys to see how we respond." Elias frowned, tapping a finger against his chin thoughtfully. "If we send our forces after them, and they turn out to be a diversion, we'll leave ourselves exposed elsewhere." Zinara clenched her fists, torn between caution and action. Her instincts screamed at her to strike, to eliminate the threat before it grew stronger. But Elias's earlier words echoed in her mind. "Stay one step ahead." Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to think strategically rather than impulsively. "What if we split our forces?" Elias suggested, breaking the silence. "Send a smaller contingent to investigate while keeping the bulk of our defenses intact. If it's a trap, we minimize our losses. If it's real, we hit them hard enough to disrupt their plans." It was a sound plan, though risky. Zinara hesitated, weighing the pros and cons. Finally, she gave a curt nod. "Agreed. But I'll lead the reconnaissance mission personally. If it's a trap, I'll handle it." Elias raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her willingness to take such a risk. Are you sure? You're too valuable to lose. Her lips curled into a faint smirk. You underestimate me, Commander Drake. I didn't survive countless battles by being reckless. Despite her bravado, Elias insisted on accompanying her. You may be a skilled warrior, but you don't know these systems like we do. Let me guide you through the terrain. Zenara wanted to refuse. Her pride balked at the idea of needing assistance, but reason prevailed. He was right. Navigating unfamiliar territory could mean the difference between success and failure. Grudgingly, she accepted his offer. The mission proved more perilous than either of them anticipated. As their small squadron approached the suspected Vorthik fleet, they discovered that it was indeed a decoy, a skeleton crew manning empty vessels designed to lure them in. True to form, the Vorthak struck moments later, ambushing them from multiple angles. Caught off guard, Zenara's first instinct was to charge headlong into the fray. But Elias shouted over the comms, "Hold your position. We can use their numbers against them." Recalling Elias's earlier advice, she decided to try a different approach. Instead of ordering Renok to stand down, she asked, "What makes you think caution is a weakness? Have you considered the risks of rushing blindly into battle?" Renok blinked, clearly surprised by her response. "Commander, with all due respect, hesitation only invites disaster. Our enemies will exploit any delay." "True," Zenara acknowledged, "but recklessness can be just as deadly. Tell me, what do you see when you look at the humans?" Renok hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "I see cowards who rely on tricks instead of strength." "And what else?" Zenara pressed. "Think carefully. What have they accomplished since we arrived here?" Reluctantly, Renok admitted, "They've held their ground against overwhelming odds. They adapt quickly, even when outnumbered." "Exactly," Zenara said firmly. "Adaptability is a form of strength, one we could learn from. Trust me, Lieutenant. This alliance isn't a sign of weakness, it's a strategy. Together, we'll achieve far more than either of us could alone." To her relief, Renok nodded slowly, accepting her reasoning. Though his expression remained skeptical, he backed down without further argument. As he left the room, Zenara let out a quiet breath, realizing she had just taken a step toward becoming a better leader, one who inspired loyalty rather than demanded it. Over the next few days, Zenara continued to observe Elias's interactions with his crew. She noticed how he took the time to listen to their concerns, offering solutions that empowered them rather than solving problems for them. When tensions arose among team members, he mediated calmly, encouraging open communication rather than imposing his will. Slowly, she began to incorporate similar practices into her own command style. One afternoon, during a planning session, Elias noticed the change in her demeanor. "You've been different lately," he remarked casually. "More patient." Zenara raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment?" "It is," he said with a grin. "Change isn't easy, especially for someone like you. But I think you're starting to see that strength comes in many forms." She didn't respond immediately, choosing instead to study the holographic map in front of them. For once, she didn't feel the need to defend herself or justify her actions. Maybe Elias was right. Maybe strength wasn't just about wielding power. It was also about knowing when to share it, when to listen, and when to trust. As they prepared for their next move against the Vorthak horde, Zenara felt a newfound sense of purpose. She wasn't just fighting for victory anymore. She was learning what it meant to lead with wisdom, as well as courage. And for the first time, she realized that perhaps the greatest battles weren't fought with weapons, but within oneself. The tension aboard the outpost was palpable as the final preparations for the climactic battle against the Vorthak horde took shape. Intelligence reports indicated that the enemy fleet had regrouped and was now advancing directly toward the Human Caliph Alliance's position. This time, there would be no decoys or feints. The Vorthak were coming in full force, determined to crush all resistance. Zinara Vale stood at the center of the command room, her silver armor gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Around her, humans and Caliph warriors bustled about, coordinating strategies and arming themselves for the fight ahead. The air hummed with a mixture of anxiety and resolve. Despite the odds stacked against them, morale remained high, a testament to the unity forged between the two species over recent weeks. Commander Elias Drake entered the room, his expression grim but focused. He carried a data tablet displaying the latest updates on the Vortex movements. "They're moving faster than we anticipated," he said, addressing Zinara and the assembled leaders. "If we don't act soon, they'll overwhelm us before we can execute our plan." Zinara nodded, her glowing green eyes narrowing, as she studied the holographic map hovering above the central table. "Then we strike first," she declared firmly. "We hit them hard where it hurts, cut off their supply lines, and disrupt their formations." Elias agreed, though his voice carried a note of caution. "Agreed, but we need to be smart about it. Their numbers are overwhelming, so we'll have to rely on precision strikes and quick withdrawals. Hit-and-run tactics will keep them off balance." Together, they devised a daring strategy. Zinara would lead a contingent of Caliph fighters in a frontal assault, drawing the bulk of the Vorthek forces into a trap. Meanwhile, Elias and a smaller mixed-species squadron would flank the enemy, targeting critical points like communication hubs and ammunition depots. The goal was simple yet perilous: divide and conquer. As the fleets mobilized, Zinara addressed her troops one last time. Her voice boomed across the hangar bay, commanding attention. "Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for every being who values freedom and honor. The Vorthek seek to destroy everything we hold dear, but they will fail. Stand strong, my warriors, and show them the fury of the Caliph." Her words ignited a fierce determination among her soldiers, their cheers echoing through the chamber. Nearby, Elias watched silently, impressed by Zinara's ability to inspire loyalty. Though their approaches differed, he recognized that they shared the same core belief: victory required sacrifice. When the moment came, both fleets launched simultaneously. Zinara's ships surged forward, weapons blazing as they engaged the Vorthek vanguard. The sheer ferocity of their attack caught the enemy off guard, forcing them to divert resources to counter the assault. As planned, this created an opening for Elias's flanking team to slip past the chaos undetected. Navigating through dense asteroid fields and shadowy nebulae, Elias guided his squadron toward their objectives. Alongside him flew a mix of human pilots and Caliph warriors, each working seamlessly together despite their differences. Communication crackled over the comms as they exchanged updates and encouragement. "This is Bravo Squad. We've reached the comm hub. Preparing to disable it now," came a voice from one of the teams. "Copy that, Bravo," Elias replied. "Stay sharp. Hostiles could converge on your position at any moment." Moments later, another report came in. "Echo team here. Ammo depot neutralized. Moving to secondary target." With each successful strike, the Vorthek's coordination faltered. Their once disciplined ranks began to fracture, leaving them vulnerable to further attacks. But the battle was far from over. As Zinara's forces pressed deeper into the fray, they encountered increasingly heavy resistance. Plasma bolts streaked across space, lighting up the void with deadly brilliance. In the heat of combat, Zinara found herself surrounded by enemy fighters. Outnumbered and outgunned, she fought with unmatched skill, her plasma blades slicing through drones and interceptors alike. Yet even her strength had limits, and fatigue began to creep in. Just as she prepared for what might be her final stand, reinforcements arrived in the form of Elias's squadron. "We're not letting you take all the glory," Elias quipped over the comms, his fighters swooping in to provide cover fire. Zinara smirked, gratitude flashing briefly across her face. "About time you showed up, Commander." Working in tandem, the two squads unleashed a devastating barrage, clearing a path for the rest of their forces to advance. The tide of the battle shifted dramatically. turning what had seemed like certain defeat into a glimmer of hope. Back at the outpost, the remaining crew monitored the conflict from afar, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Every explosion, every transmission brought new updates and new fears. When word finally came that the Vorthok fleet was retreating, cheers erupted throughout the facility. Elias and Zenera regrouped near the edge of the battlefield, their ships battered but intact. Over the comms, Elias spoke with quiet triumph. "We did it. They're falling back." Zenera allowed herself a rare smile, pride swelling in her chest. "Yes, we did. Together." But the victory wasn't without cost. Several ships had been lost, and many lives sacrificed to secure their win. As the survivors returned to the outpost, Zenera made a point to personally thank each member of the combined fleet. For the first time, she understood the weight of leadership, not just the victories, but the losses too. That night, as the galaxy celebrated their hard-fought triumph, Zenera stood alongside Elias on the observation deck once more. The stars twinkled peacefully beyond the windows, a stark contrast to the violence that had unfolded hours earlier. "You proved me wrong," Zenera admitted quietly, breaking the silence. "Humans aren't cowards. You fight with courage I didn't think possible." Elias chuckled softly. "And you proved that strength isn't just about power. It's about knowing when to trust others and work together." For a moment, neither spoke. The bond they had formed transcended species and cultures, built on mutual respect and shared adversity. In that moment, Zenera realized something profound. True strength wasn't about dominance or superiority. It was about connection, understanding, and the willingness to grow. As the outpost drifted silently through the vastness of space, both commanders gazed outward, hopeful for a future where such alliances could become the norm rather than the exception. The war against the Vorthok may have ended, but the lessons learned would shape them, and their peoples, for generations to come. The aftermath of the battle against the Vorthok horde left a profound mark on everyone involved. The outpost, though battered and scarred, remained standing, a testament to the resilience of its crew and the strength of the alliance between humans and Caliph. Repairs were underway, engineers working tirelessly to patch up damaged systems, while medical teams tended to the wounded. Amidst the chaos, there was also a sense of triumph, a shared pride in what they had accomplished together. Zenera Vale stood on the bridge of her flagship, now docked temporarily at the outpost. Her armor bore fresh scorch marks from the fight, but she paid them little mind. Instead, her thoughts lingered on the events that had unfolded. She had entered this mission convinced of humanity's weakness, yet here she was, surrounded by evidence of their courage and ingenuity. It wasn't just Elias who had challenged her preconceptions. It was every human who had fought alongside her, proving that strength could take many forms. Elias Drake joined her shortly after, his uniform still stained with soot and grease from the repairs he'd been assisting with. He carried 2 steaming cups of synthetic coffee, offering one to Zenera. "Thought you might need this," he said with a lopsided grin. "You look like you've got a lot on your mind." Zenera accepted the cup hesitantly, unsure how to respond to such a casual gesture. Among the Caliph, displays of camaraderie outside formal settings were rare. Yet Elias seemed unfazed, treating her as an equal rather than a superior warrior. Slowly, she took a sip, surprised by the warmth it brought, not just physically, but emotionally. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice softer than usual. "But I suspect you already know what's weighing on my mind." Elias nodded, leaning against the railing beside her. "It's not easy admitting when you're wrong, especially for someone like you. But change doesn't come without discomfort." She shot him a sharp glance, though there was no malice in it. "Are you suggesting I changed?" He chuckled lightly. "I'm saying you've grown. And honestly, that's more impressive than any victory in battle." Her expression softened slightly, and for a moment, she allowed herself to reflect on his words. Over the past weeks, she had learned to see beyond the rigid beliefs instilled in her since childhood. Humans weren't cowards. They were survivors, capable of adapting and thriving in ways she hadn't imagined. Their emphasis on cooperation, empathy, and strategic thinking had proven invaluable, not only in defeating the Vorthek, but in reshaping her own perspective. "I underestimated you," Zenera admitted quietly, staring into her coffee cup as if searching for answers within its depths. "All of you. I judged your species based on stereotypes, and I was wrong." Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We all make mistakes, Zenera. What matters is what we do next. You've already started changing, for yourself and for your people." Her gaze shifted upward, meeting his steady eyes. There was something deeply comforting about his presence, a quiet confidence that reminded her of the stars themselves, constant, unwavering, and full of possibility. For the first time, she felt a genuine connection to someone outside her own species, a bond forged not through shared bloodlines or traditions, but through mutual respect and understanding. Later that day, Zenera gathered her lieutenants aboard the outpost for a debriefing session. As she addressed them, her tone carried a newfound humility. "This mission has taught us much, not only about our enemies but about ourselves. We have long prided ourselves on our strength, but true power lies in unity. Without the humans' ingenuity and determination, we would not have succeeded today." Renok, her once skeptical lieutenant, stepped forward. "Commander, I must confess, I doubted your decision to ally with them, but seeing how they fought, I was wrong. They may not fight like us, but their spirit is undeniable." Zenera nodded approvingly. "Then let this be a lesson to us all. Strength isn't measured solely by brute force or dominance. It's about adaptability, trust, and the willingness to learn from others." Her words resonated deeply with her warriors, many of whom exchanged glances of approval. For the first time, they saw their commander not just as a fearless warrior, but as a leader willing to evolve. An example they could follow. As preparations began for Zenera's departure, Elias approached her one last time. "Before you go," he said, holding out a small object wrapped in cloth, "I want you to have this." Curious, Zenera unwrapped the gift to reveal a polished metal medallion, etched with intricate patterns resembling constellations. "What is it?" she asked, turning it over in her hands. "It's a symbol of humanity's enduring spirit," Elias explained. "A reminder that even in the darkest times, hope can guide us forward. Consider it a token of gratitude for everything you've done for us." Touched by the gesture, Zenera clasped the medallion tightly. "I will treasure it always," she said sincerely, "and I will carry its message back to my people." With a final nod of respect, Elias extended his hand. After a brief hesitation, Zenera grasped it firmly, sealing their bond with a handshake that transcended species and cultures. As Zenera boarded her shuttle, ready to return to her fleet, she glanced back at the outpost one last time. The sight of humans and Caliph working side by side filled her with hope, a hope that alliances like this could pave the way for a brighter future. Though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, she knew that together they could overcome anything. The engines roared to life, and the shuttle ascended into the stars. Zenera gripped the medallion tightly, vowing to honor the lessons she had learned. Humanity wasn't weak. They were strong in ways she had never anticipated. And perhaps, just perhaps, her people could grow stronger too by embracing those same values. In the vast expanse of space, where countless worlds awaited exploration and countless stories remained untold, Zenera felt a renewed sense of purpose. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and full of potential, and she was ready to face whatever came next, armed not just with weapons, but with wisdom, compassion, and an open heart. The journey back to Caliph space was long, but Zenera Vale welcomed the solitude. It gave her time to reflect on everything she had experienced during her mission with humanity. The battles, the losses, and the victories, all of it had shaped her in ways she never anticipated. She clutched the medallion Elias had given her, its cool surface a constant reminder of the lessons she had learned. Her people's rigid beliefs about strength and honor now seemed incomplete, lacking the depth and nuance she had witnessed among humans. When Zenera finally returned to her homeworld, she was greeted by throngs of warriors and citizens, eager to hear news of her campaign against the Vorthith horde. The Caliph were a proud species, their culture steeped in traditions of conquest and valor. As Zenera stepped onto the ceremonial platform, her silver armor gleaming under the twin suns, she felt the weight of expectation settle heavily upon her shoulders. This was not just a homecoming. It was an opportunity to reshape her people's future. Standing before the gathered crowd, Zenera began her address. Her voice carried across the plaza, strong and clear. "We have faced great challenges and emerged victorious," she declared, eliciting cheers from the audience. But then her tone shifted, becoming more introspective. Yet this victory was not ours alone. It was made possible through an alliance with a species many of us once dismissed as weak, humans. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Humans, working alongside Caliph warriors. To most, it sounded impossible. Zenera raised a hand for silence, her glowing green eyes scanning the faces of her people. "They do not fight as we do," she continued. "They rely not on brute force, but on strategy, adaptability, and unity. They taught me that true strength lies not only in power but in trust, in knowing when to stand firm and when to listen." Her words hung in the air, challenging centuries of ingrained beliefs. Some looked skeptical, others intrigued, but all listened intently. Zenera held up the medallion, letting the sunlight catch its intricate patterns. "This is a symbol of their spirit, a reminder that even in darkness, hope can guide us forward. I bring it back to you as proof that there is much we can learn from those who are different from us." In the days that followed, Zenera became a vocal advocate for collaboration with humanity. She convened meetings with Caliph leaders, sharing detailed accounts of the Alliance's successes and urging them to reconsider their stance toward other species. At first, resistance was fierce. Many elders viewed such cooperation as a betrayal of their warrior ethos, while younger warriors questioned whether humans truly deserved their respect. But Zenera persisted, drawing on her experiences to make her case. One evening, during a particularly heated debate, a young Caliph soldier stood up and challenged her. "Commander Vale, why should we trust humans? What makes them worthy allies?" Zenera met his gaze steadily, her voice calm but firm. "Because they proved themselves worthy, not through words, but through actions. They fought beside us, sacrificed for us, and trusted us when we least expected it. If we cannot see value in that, then we are no better than the enemies we seek to defeat." Her response silenced the room, forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable truths about their own prejudices. Slowly, attitudes began to shift. Stories of the human-Caliph alliance spread throughout the clans, inspiring curiosity and admiration. Warriors who had once mocked humanity now spoke of their ingenuity and resilience. Even the elders, though reluctant, acknowledged that Zenera's vision offered a path toward greater stability and prosperity. Meanwhile, aboard the outpost near contested space, Commander Elias Drake prepared for his next assignment. News of the Alliance's success had reached Earth, earning him recognition as a hero. Yet despite the accolades, Elias remained humble, crediting the victory to teamwork rather than individual effort. As he packed his belongings, he couldn't help but think of Zenera and the bond they had formed. Their partnership had transcended species and cultures, proving that understanding could bridge even the widest divides. Before departing, Elias addressed the outpost's crew one last time. "What we accomplished here wasn't just about defeating the Vorthak horde," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "It was about showing that cooperation and mutual respect can overcome any obstacle. Let's carry that lesson forward, no matter where our journeys take us." The crew erupted into applause, their spirits buoyed by his words. Though they would soon scatter to different postings, the memory of their shared struggle would remain etched in their hearts. Months passed, and the ripple effects of the alliance continued to spread. Diplomatic envoys from both species began meeting regularly, laying the groundwork for formal treaties and joint operations. Trade routes reopened, fostering economic growth and cultural exchange. On the battlefield, Caliph and human forces coordinated seamlessly, their combined strength deterring further aggression from hostile factions like the Vorthak Horde. For Zenara, the changes brought both joy and challenges. Leading her people through such a profound transformation required patience and perseverance. There were setbacks, moments when old biases resurfaced or tensions flared, but she faced each obstacle with determination. Her unwavering commitment inspired others to follow suit, creating a wave of progress that swept across Caliph society. As for Elias, he embraced new missions with renewed purpose. His encounter with Zenara had deepened his belief in the power of empathy and collaboration. Wherever he went, he carried the story of their alliance, using it as a beacon of hope in times of uncertainty. He knew that true peace would take generations to achieve, but every step forward mattered. One night, under a sky ablaze with stars, Zenara found herself gazing upward, the medallion still hanging around her neck. Somewhere out there, Elias was doing the same, their thoughts intertwined by shared experiences and mutual respect. Though light years apart, they remained connected by a legacy of understanding, a testament to the idea that even the most unlikely bonds could change the course of history. In the vastness of the galaxy, countless worlds awaited exploration, and countless stories remained untold. But for Zenara and Elias, one truth stood above all others. The universe was full of potential, and together, humanity and the Caliph could unlock it. With hope as their guide and unity as their strength, they looked toward the stars, ready to face whatever came next.